Okay. Most of us here today are in Edmonton. Some people are in other places around the country and even in Mexico. But most of us are here in Edmonton. It's always important for us to honor and acknowledge the spirit and power of the place we call home. So first I want to acknowledge that the city of Edmonton is on Treaty 6 territory. The city and its citizens have been beneficiaries of this peace and friendship treaty since 1877. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta, regions 2, 3, and 4, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge and honor the ancestors' traditions and spirit of this land that first drew Indigenous peoples and then settlers to this special place. Let us acknowledge and honor that we are on Treaty 6 territory and together call upon those honored traditions and the spirit and intent of the treaty to maintain us in stronger and lasting relationships. And I will move on to a bit about the workshop and the project. So this workshop is a result of two projects, both focusing on preventing gender-based violence. One project in Guatemala was implemented by Ser Niña and Real Girl and led in collaboration with an Alberta organization called Real Humanitarian. The other was in Honduras and was implemented by OCTI, the Christian Organization for Integrated Development of Honduras, in partnership with Sombrilla here in Edmonton. Both projects were funded by Global Affairs through the Fund for Innovation and Transformation, or FIT. FIT supports small and medium-sized organizations with grants that enable them to test innovative solutions that advance gender equality in the Global South. It was the support and funding from FIT that made these projects possible. This workshop was also funded by FIT as part of a knowledge-sharing grant that both organizations received. And I would like to introduce the three people who will be leading us in our workshop today. First is Danielle Scogan. Can you wave at us, Danielle? Danielle's been a leader in the international gender equity and women's empowerment movement. She's the co-founder of the Guatemalan nonprofit Ser Niña and helps lead their international arm, Real Girl. She's also served as a program development director for Real Humanitarian for 3 years. In these roles, she has co-created over 300 hours of empowerment and equity curriculum, helped bring transformational equity and empowerment programs to over 3,000 people living in the Global South, and secured over $1.6 million for gender and child-centered causes. Danielle also served other organizations, businesses, and individuals as a coach and consultant. Next, there is Maria Montenegro. Maria, want to wave? Yeah. Maria was the project coordinator for Sombrilla's Equal Access to Justice for Women in Honduras project. She's a credentialed evaluator, passionate about helping organizations use evidence to inform their programs and policy. She has experience working in several sectors, including healthcare, education, immigration, and settlement and gender equity. She is currently a leader of virtual health research and evaluation at Fraser Health Authority and an independent evaluation consultant. And Maria is joining us from Mexico today. Anne Goldblatt will be our facilitator. And this is the second workshop Anne has led for Sombrilla. We really enjoy her creative approach to sharing information, insights, and learning. And I will turn it over to Anne.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I just give a brief introduction to myself and then just go through the outline, and then we're going to do a quick popcorn of introductions among the people who are here tonight. So I work as a contract consultant, and I facilitate planning and evaluation and variations on a theme. And a lot of the issues that I am involved with have to do with poverty, with immigrant, refugee, and Indigenous communities. And I teach in the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. I teach a course on addressing issues at a community level, and I've always had some threads of connection to international development. So I'm happy happy to be here. And I'm just going to share the screen with the plan, and then we'll just do a round of introductions where people have a chance to say what hat you're wearing being at this workshop this evening, and where you're situated. So if you're associated with a group or organization, you could share that. So so Danielle had sent out the plan for this evening, so I'll just put it in front of me. So there's really two parts. So we're going to do a kind of talk show interview with both Maria and Danielle to give an overview of their projects, and then to dive into at least one and maybe two key learnings from the projects. Then we'll have a short break, and then we'll move into some reflection on some parallels, some challenges that seem familiar, and application of the experiences, and some reflections, and that will be in a small group breakout format, and then bring it back together at the end. So if we could, maybe Patsy, do you mind? I'll just pick on you since I know Patsy. If you could just start with the introductions and then just pop it to someone else, and we'll just make this quick.
Hi, I'm Patsy. I typically turn my screen off because my computer always goes wonky on me. And so this is my best way of like hoping that it doesn't happen. I'm with Sombrilla. I've been with Sombrilla for a number of years now. And that's me. So Katrin is sitting there, right there.
Sure. My name is Katrin, and I'm also a volunteer with Sombrilla. And I'll turn it over to Marianne, please.
Oh, Marianne, you're muted.
Sorry, I am a volunteer with Sombrilla in Edmonton. Rick?
Looks like I'm the only male on the screen here today. Just this summer introduced to this project that somebody has been conducting in Honduras, and I'm just a recently returning member of Sombrilla.
You can pass it to someone else then, Rick. Yeah.
So sorry, I should have understood.
That's okay.
So I'm going to go to Charlene.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlene. I'm on the board of Sombrilla, my first year, and I have my video off because I'm having my dinner. So I'm going to turn it back off. Nice to meet you all.
You could pass it to someone else then, just before.
Indira.
Indira, are you there?
I'm not sure if Indira just came in. Maybe we should give her a minute.
Okay,
Okay.
It will pass it to Adrian. I'll pick on somebody else I know.
Hi, folks. I haven't seen some of you for a long time. My name is Adrienne Weeb, and I am the International Projects Manager at Change for Children.
And can you pass the baton? Oh, you're muted now.
To Rachel.
Hey, sorry, I got a new phone and it takes me a while to figure out where the mute button is. I'm Rachel. I'm the co-executive director of Real Humanitarian, and I'm just excited to hear about the other project. And yeah, it'll be fun to have tonight. I will pass it to, who hasn't gone yet? Brandy.
Thank you. I'm on, but I actually might have to sign off early. Sorry about that. But I am the co-leader of the SaskAlta Days for Girls team in Sherwood Park with my mom, Linda, who's also on, who also has a conflict of interest tonight and is trying to do two things at once. We fundraise here and we sponsor an enterprise in Guatemala for Days for Girls, and we've also worked with Danielle and worked with Cernina and do a market with Sombrilla, and so we're really excited to be here. And if either one of us signs off early, it's not from lack of interest, it's for other reasons, but thank you for having us both.
And do you want to, shall we pass it to you, Linda? No. Okay, you're the mother.
I think Zoom on my mom's phone is new for her, like both
Okay,
of
no
us
problem.
aren't versed on doing this on the phone, and so she's at something, and so I
Okay.
said I'd introduce both of us, so thank
Okay,
you.
sure. Okay, so why don't we go to Yara?
Hi everyone, my name is Yara Medrano. I'm with ACGC and I'm based in Edmonton and I'm the project officer assistant. So
Great.
I'll
Okay.
pass to Hope.
Hi everyone, I'm Hope. I'm also with ACGC as the Youth and Public Engagement Lead, and I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say tonight. And I will pass it to, unsure who hasn't gone yet.
I think Indira.
Indira, are you there, Indira? Maybe she had to step away, or technologically things aren't working. Okay, I think
That's everyone.
I think we have everyone. So, okay, well, welcome. So we're gonna start with our talk show, and I thought I could just create some atmosphere, because every talk show needs a plant in the middle on a table in front of us. So that's our plant. And then for Danielle and Maria, I have a glass of cold water for you, had you been here with the plant. So we're going to start off with Maria giving an overview of the project in which she was involved, and then we're going to show a short video that's one of a couple of videos that was produced and about the project, and then we'll move to Danielle.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. So thank you so much, Anna. Really nice being here with everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm gonna hopefully be able to summarize this project in 5 minutes. The project that I am presenting is called Access to Justice for Women in Honduras. And it was a project implemented by an organization in Honduras called OCDE, Organismo Cristiano de Desarrollo Integral, and Sombrilla, who was the organization within Canada that supported the project. And the intention of the project was to achieve greater empowerment of women and girls in their ability to protect their rights, and in particular, the right to a life free of violence. So the project took place in Honduras, where gender-based violence and femicides are extremely high in the region. So that was the focus of the project. And what the project tried to do was implement initiatives at various levels to address the problem of gender-based violence in 10 communities in a specific area of Honduras called Lempira. And the areas were chosen because they were highly rural, they had limited access to public services, and within the communities, there was a distinction between some that were a lot more remote and had even less services, and some that were a bit centered around urban, somewhat urban centers within them. And some of the activities that the project had several activities. The main activities that it had was a capacity building campaign using a train the trainer model. So there was topics of gender, women rights, the different types of violence, as well as the legal process for that women had available to them if they experienced violence. So that capacity training was provided to women in each of the communities, and then the women replicated the trainings in their communities to a broader group. So that was the train the trainer model. There was also an awareness campaign that was implemented across all the communities with high representation of local community members as well as local cultural aspects that made the campaign more relevant. So an example of this was a couple of murals that were created by local artists representing women who had fought for women's rights and had the message of the public awareness campaign. The other initiative that was implemented was self-help groups. So there was 14 groups that were established across the 10 communities where women got together to discuss the learnings of the capacity building trainings, to provide support to each other, to have a sense of community, of support for those that were experiencing violence. And these groups met monthly in each of the communities. Women each rotated the responsibility of preparing food and spending a nice social moment with each other. And then all of this work kind of led to preparing the awareness and the trust within the community for the launch of a mobile clinic, which was made up of a lawyer and a psychologist that traveled to the different communities in a car to meet women where they were, to provide legal and psychological services in a safe way, in places where they weren't exposed, and really centering women and women's choices throughout their services. So although it was a goal of the project to have many cases that were brought up to the justice system, one of the priorities of the project was to respect women's choices, to just provide the support, but let them make the decisions for themselves. So, so that was the approach that the services had. Yeah, so those were the four initiatives that were implemented. And before I run over time, just wanted to share some numbers just so you can have an idea of what the project accomplished in its 1.5 years, I think it was. So there were about 195 women and girls that were trained through the capacity building workshops. 177 women participated in 14 self-help groups that, to the best of our awareness, they're still ongoing. They were established groups that the communities wanted to keep even after the project ended. 100 women received psychological support through the mobile clinic, and 52 women received legal support from the clinic's lawyers. And that includes cases that were brought up to the justice system that were filed, and there was a case that either was resolved or is ongoing. But it also includes women that wanted to meet with a lawyer and learn about their options and make informed decisions.
Maria, thank you very much. Do you want to say anything about the video before we share the first this video?
Yes. So the video was developed as part of the project to ensure that there were voices of the women participating in the project, sharing about their experiences. The woman that talks in the project was one of the women that were trained through the capacity building trainings, and she also was one of the leaders of the self-help groups. So very engaged in the project. And yeah, I think the project speaks for itself, and so I think that's as much interest I can provide.
Thank you very much. Okay. If there's any problem with the sound or what you're seeing, just let me know and we'll stop.
nombre es Marta Murcia, soy de la comunidad de Merced de la Flor El Empira. Bueno, soy parte del proyecto Acceso a la Justicia para la Mujer de Honduras y estoy trabajando aquí en mi comunidad con un grupo de mujeres. Para mí ha sido bien bonita esta experiencia. Yo creo que hemos adquirido mucho conocimiento y es por eso que nos sentimos felices, nos sentimos alegres, con un grado de conocimiento que sabemos que nos va a ayudar para un futuro. Quizás nosotros en estas comunidades consciente o inconscientemente hemos sufrido abusos, quizás en la niñez, tal vez no con nuestros esposos, porque la mayor parte de las mujeres que estamos formadas en estos grupos somos mujeres que tenemos nuestras parejas y siempre, como yo he dicho y pienso que sí hay violencia, que nosotros quizás aún no sabíamos que eran abusos o que era violencia. Pero ahora con las capacitaciones y con el proyecto de acceso a la justicia para la mujer de Honduras hemos adquirido esos conocimientos. Tenemos el grupo de autoayuda en mi comunidad que lo formamos 12 mujeres, las cuales nos reunimos una vez al mes para hacer saber y dar los conocimientos de lo que hemos aprendido, cuáles son los conocimientos que hemos recibido de cada reunión que tenemos. Compartimos nuestras emociones, compartimos nuestras alegrías, quizás nuestras tristezas. Y desde el momento que hemos dicho que es un grupo de autoayuda es para ayudarnos unas con otras. Hemos tenido ya 3, 4 reuniones y hemos agarrado cariño para cada una de las mujeres, confianza. Si alguna de las mujeres tiene problemas, no lo compartimos y tratamos de ayudarnos unas con otras. Para mí el grupo en mi persona me ha servido para liberar algunas emociones, para conocer cuál es la necesidad mía como mujer, donde yo necesito ayuda quizás profesional. De repente nosotros en otro tiempo no sabíamos que necesitábamos esta ayuda. Cuando comenzamos en el grupo de autoayuda yo me preguntaba, pero ¿yo qué puedo ir a platicar? ¿Qué puedo decir? Pero conforme nos fuimos reuniendo y fuimos aprendiendo, yo fui conociendo cuáles eran mis necesidades. Y también fui conociendo las necesidades de mis otras compañeras. Entonces ahora nos sentimos quizás con conocimientos, no solo para nosotros, sino que también para ayudar a alguna otra persona, a alguna otra mujer que necesite, que esté pasando y alguna necesidad y nosotros ahora podemos ayudar a otra mujer. ¿Cuál es nuestro objetivo en el grupo o cuál es el propósito a futuro? Nosotros queremos mantener a este grupo como autoayuda. El proyecto solo va a ser por 8 meses, pero nosotros queremos seguir, queremos mantenerlo, queremos seguir quizás logrando propósitos, capacitaciones, ser tomadas en cuenta no solamente por ustedes como ONTI, sino que igual por cualquier organización que nos quiera apoyar. Mi deseo es, y yo sé que el de mis compañeras también, que el grupo continúe hasta al final, llegar hasta que decimos nosotros, que nunca se acabe, que siempre esté ahí para el beneficio nuestro y para el beneficio de otras muchas más personas.
Okay. 1 second. Okay, so we're going to move to having Danielle provide an overview of the project in Guatemala. And we will show a video as well, but we'll show it as part of our discussion about one of the emerging themes. So over to you, Danielle.
Thanks so much, Anne. And Maria, it's always incredible to hear about Sombrilla's incredible project. So my name's Danielle. I'm going to talk to you about the project we implemented in Guatemala. Just for reference, I kind of wore two hats with this project. It was implemented by the local partner, which is Asociación Ser Niña, part of the Real Girl Foundation. I am one of Ser Niña's co-founders. I lived in Guatemala for about 7 years, helping to launch and implement that program. I moved back to Canada in about 2019 and joined the Real Humanitarian, formerly Canadian Humanitarian. If you've heard of Canadian Humanitarian, it's now Real Humanitarian. And I joined that team, and that through Real Humanitarian is how we were able to receive funding from the Fund for Innovation and Transformation and implement this program in Guatemala. So Ser Niña had been working in Guatemala since 2014 with the sole mission of advancing the empowerment of girls and women. Like almost all organizations in that field, we started our work working exclusively with girls and girls only, and quickly realized the need to actually start including boys in our programs as well. So in 2017, we had already started working with boys. Initially, we only did more empowerment and leadership focused activities through weekly workshops. The children would be enrolled in our programs for 2 years, receiving about 160 hours of workshop support. We also recognized that the vast majority of our participants that were girls were victims of gender-based violence, often sexual violence. So we also started offering violence response services in a smaller capacity. Really kind of the trend I'm trying to show here is that we started kind of with, you know, a more narrow focus and a more narrow reach, working with just girls, and quickly realized the increased impact when we actually broadened the scope by offering a bit more diverse services and also including boys as well. And that kind of foundation was really led us to propose an even deeper and more holistic approach when it came to requesting the funding from the Fund for Innovation and Transformation. We received funding from them in 2021 for a 15-month project. And the scope of the project was really to test to see if we could increase our impact if we started to work much more holistically, primarily by engaging entire families, as opposed to working with girls only or girls and boys, but not really including older children and also not including their parents. So the focus of our program really was to advance the empowerment and leadership of girls and women, and also to specifically decrease rates of gender-based violence within the partner community that we were working in. It's a tall order in 15 months. It was definitely a challenge, but we were able to achieve great success and also learn a lot of powerful things along the way that are continuing to impact our program. One piece of information that's really important to note is that though Ser Niña works in over 7 different communities in Guatemala, we did choose to focus in just one community for the FIT project. We really wanted to see what could happen if we kind of challenge this narrative in not-for-profit that more is always better and that we have to reach as many people as possible and often sacrifice the quality and impact of our programs. So we really want to see what could happen when we invested in one community a significant amount of time, resources, and energy, and really worked with more people in that one community and offered more services. Our program was really focused on being holistic in multiple senses of the word. We wanted to be holistic in reach, so we worked with whole families. We worked with boys, girls, that would be children and teenagers. We worked with the mothers and fathers, and we also worked with community elders and educators. So we were really trying to tap kind of everyone that would be interacting with the life of a girl in this community. We also wanted to be holistic in our offering. So we did continue with our workshop approach and went with these different groups of stakeholders every single week. So we had mothers groups and fathers groups and boy groups and girl groups and teacher groups as well. But beyond the workshops, we also, one of the really big innovations of this program was including a much more of a healing and therapeutic approach. So we did have therapists on staff that were providing individual, couple, and family therapy to all of the participants, obviously at their own, they would volunteer for these. They were not, we could not make them mandatory, of course. All of our therapists were locally trained therapists, but they also were Mayan healers. So another key part of our program was including Mayan healing modalities and traditional Mayan practices to build a sense of self-worth, self-esteem, cultural connection, and community connection as well, and to bring about increased healing. There's so much more that I really want to say about the project, but I'm keeping an eye on the time. Just like Maria, I'll wrap up with some numbers. We had about 29 families that were enrolled in the project. That was over 200 individuals, including some of the teachers. By the end of the projects, the number of reported cases of violence dropped by 45% among participating families. 62% of the individuals that were in the program reported overcoming a specific situation of violence as a result of the program, and 79% of individuals reported feeling safer in their homes and in their families after participating in the program as well. There's some key learnings, but those will also come up in the discussion. So I think that's, I think I'm at time, so I'll wrap it up.
Thank you, Danielle. So there's a lot to absorb there from both projects, and I know that's just kind of a surface overview, but I think it does give us a good sense of what the projects were about. So when I met with Maria and Danielle, and we talked about the project, there were a number of themes that emerged. So we picked two of them and thought it would be interesting to just hear them talk about some of the dynamics involved with these two issues. So the first one has to do with who you chose to involve, and that's part of where the video with Danielle's project comes in afterward. So my read of the two projects is you made decisions that were quite different, but for specific reasons. So for the project in Honduras, you chose to focus on women, and that was a strength to make women the primary players in the project. And whereas in the project in Guatemala, you made an intentional decision to broaden and involve boys and men and whole families. And so my question to both of you is whether you experienced some tension, some pushback, some people wondering why you decided to make the focus the one that you did, so that did men feel somewhat alienated by the focus on women? So maybe we'll start there, Maria, just what kind of responses you experienced from people.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the response would be more so from perhaps from people working within like gender equity, from the funders that often were like, what about men? Because and one of the things that the project realized when it was implemented was that it was necessary to include men as well. This is addressing gender-based violence is not something that can be accomplished if you just focus on women. So there was that recognition within the project. There were some aspects that were men were engaged in the project. There was a capacity training on what they call new masculinities that tried to dismantle some of the negative stereotypes that men have within themselves and between the roles and women's roles, and that perpetuate violence. So that was implemented with a few men, about 24, about 2 from each of the communities. And that leveraged another project that our partner organization had, because they have several initiatives in the local community. For the public awareness campaign, there were several big signs and TV ads that focused on men, and men talking to other men saying, do not, like, stop violence towards women. So that was implemented. However, just in terms of the pushback, maybe something that I will comment that I reflected upon here in Danielle's story is that within these communities, in the topic of gender-based violence, this was the first initiative that OFDI and Sombrilla had implemented. So there was pushback from men around the project. In some communities, there was one specific community that was intended to be in the project, and they just weren't open, and it was a bit unsafe for the project to work in there. So they had to find another community. So there has to be some level of readiness within the communities. And I think with the project that was accomplished, because the topics where it was discussed, there were murals, there was a public awareness campaign, there were some men involved in the campaign, some young men involved as well. But I do think if we had focused on men and women, it could have potentially been a lot harder, because the readiness and awareness wasn't there when the project started.
So it kind of sounds like you sort of tailored it depending on what aspect you were focused on. It wasn't exclusively on women, but there were times where it made sense to work with women.
Yeah, I think that something that that was, I think, a strength of the project was that it was fluid in responding to the community's needs. So one aspect was demands, like we recognized men needed to be engaged, and that this training was developed. It wasn't initially planned for him. And then similarly, some of the work with young girls and young boys at schools was in response to the communities reaching out and saying, like, yes, we need gender-based violence, but also women and boys are being bullied, and this is a very big problem in our schools. So then within the training, those topics were trying to be addressed as well, just to be responsive to what was happening there and what the communities needed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So Danielle, in your situation, it seemed like the decision was made early on to include men and boys, whole families. And I wondered, from that angle, did you have people kind of questioning why you had gone so broad, and whether or not some people felt like, no, this is an issue where women are most at risk, are in the most vulnerable situations, and the project should have kept a focus on women?
Yeah, great question. It's so interesting, Maria sharing about the challenges. Sometimes funders want to know why not men, and I feel like our boat is having to often explain to funders why we are including boys and men, and kind of defending that decision. So it's hard. Thankfully, for this specific project, FIT was incredibly supportive from the get-go about that decision. So yes, we, even prior to FIT, but really with the FIT project, really want to lean into including boys and men. The main reason for doing that is, we don't just see it as more effective, but also the more responsible thing to do as well. I think our concern is when we're equipping girls and women with like the language and confidence and tools needed to advocate for themselves and to use their voices, and then they're continuing to live in families or communities where that is not truly practiced, and they're in relationships with men that might not agree with this, we are potentially putting them in danger by helping equip them with these skills. So we really wanted to include men for this reason. And I think that's how we really try to explain it to people that are just, confused or maybe disagree with this idea, is that our whole mission is still the advancement and empowerment of women. That absolutely has not changed. Our work with boys and men is to be able to advance our mission in a more, quicker and impactful and safer way, is really why we're doing it, so that the mission has not changed and our focus on girls and women. And when I've presented this before, I've had a diagram that shows the different stakeholders that we're working with, but girls really still are at the center, and keeping that in mind always when it comes to designing our programs is like, this is truly what we're doing, and not kind of going too far off that as well. One thing that we really noticed when it came to working with, we've never had too much pushback with working with boys from the boys themselves. Patriarchy is really a learned viewpoint. And when we're working with the boys at a young enough age, I mean, there's already seeds planted, but there is still openness and eagerness to engage in this work. Working with men was a lot more challenging. We knew it would be hard, and we did underestimate how challenging that would be, and we did struggle for some time. I think what we really learned is the reality is we need people to understand what's in it for themselves. And when we first launched the programs with men, we were really kind of promoting how it would be better for their wives and better for their families, and buy-in was really low. And so we kind of had to change the approach and actually just really start talking about how they would personally benefit from engaging in this program, how finances in their family could improve if women were empowered, and what that would look like for their families in different ways that, the men, could themselves benefit. And that's when we truly did start to get buy-in and saw an increase in engagement. And this is not me, in any way throwing men under the bus of, this self-motivation. I think that's how we all truly function as humans at the end of the day, is really often trying to see, like, how does this impact my own life, really? And that's where we saw success when it came to getting buy-in from the men, was, having them understand how they were personally affected potentially in negative ways by these deeply patriarchal systems as well, and how their lives could be improved if gender equity existed in their families or communities. And another key piece was really just having kind of men champions in the community. We did struggle more when it was our team and our team of women out there advocating for the program. Once we had a couple men that bought into the program and they could really advocate for it to their brothers and cousins and friends, then we did see a much bigger increase. So really getting a couple, even just one or two of those champions that the other men in the community already respect was really instrumental in getting increased buy-in. But it was very hard, and it's still hard. We did not have I'll be upfront, we did not have 100% participation from the fathers. We only had about in the range of like 50 to 60% of the dads participating, which when we started the project, we would have been disappointed by that number, but by the end, we were very happy, because that was a significant increase from the one or two that showed up to the first workshop. So,
yeah. And the video has a nice little piece, I think, if I remember, about somebody who sort of talks about his own transition. And thank you very much, Danielle. Maria, do you want to add any comments based on just what Danielle was just talking about?
No, I think what resonated was around the working with children, and then working with men, and the challenges that involves. And I think to some extent our project, although we didn't focus initially on men, so the efforts I don't think were as significant to engage men, but there was a similar response and hesitancy perhaps from participating in the project in general.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll show the video, and Danielle, if you can also just give me a thumbs up if the sound and the visual part is working, and then we'll know we're in luck.
El poder personal, el empoderamiento. And another key innovation was our work with boys and men. That is a foundational aspect of all that we do at Serenini and Real Girl, and it continued to be a foundational aspect of this project. We believe that we can't achieve real change in terms of gender equality if we're not including everyone in the conversation.
Siempre hemos creído firmemente que para lograr verdaderamente la igualdad de género debemos incluir a niños y hombres. La dura verdad o la dura realidad de Guatemala es que la gran mayoría de los incidentes de violencia tienen perpetuadores masculinos, por lo que para terminar realmente con la violencia de género debemos trabajar con los propios hombres, porque si no, de lo contrario, pues solo estamos abordando el síntoma y no la causa desde la raíz.
Really, the impacts that we've seen from the program, even though it only lasted a year, were truly tremendous. We've seen key indicators of change in the rates of violence within the home. Over 50% of those that we interviewed that were experiencing violence before the program say they are no longer experiencing violence. The biggest shifts were in rates of physical violence and emotional violence. Also, almost all of the participants reported that they feel safer in their homes and in their daily lives after participating in the program. Additionally, some key changes are the empowerment and advancement of women. That's really been one of the biggest results of the program, is the women taking action in their own lives. We have many of the women that are now accessing sexual and reproductive health support for the first time. Our therapist is accompanying them to a sexual health clinic, and for many of them, they've never been there before. Another example is over 22 women of the 26 women total have signed up to be part of a community leadership program to help lead community change. Additionally, there are also women that have signed up to finish their education through an adult literacy program, and also women that have requested to get training for entrepreneurship and to hopefully open their own business one day. Para mí fue muy importante aprender, pues, cómo yo puedo prosperar, cómo yo me puedo sentir apoderada de mí misma. Mis planes y mis sueños para mi futuro es, así como yo recibí el apoyo, también ser capacitada para apoyar también a más familias de mi comunidad.
Cuando yo no había entrado, todavía no tenía conocimiento sobre esto, yo era un hombre malo, más claro, ¿verdad? Que yo sí me gustaba mucho pegarles a mis hijos. Y esto es lo que me hace a mí entristecer mucho. Y cada vez que me acuerdo, ahorita es lo mismo otra vez. Yo le llevé mala vida a mi esposo porque me tanto guaro y eso yo le soltaba a ella, lo pegaba y mis hijos pagaban el plato por mi causa. Así cuando aparecieron esta institución, ellos me empezaron a darme, ¿cómo le llaman eso? Como psicológico. Y pues en los tiempos que yo he estado viviendo y todo esto, pues sí me ha servido de mucho, pero de mucho, créanme, de mucho. Porque cada vez que yo salía aquí, yo llegaba y así empezaba a ver y empezaba a ver y empezaba a practicar lo que yo miraba. Y mis hijos también, pues, así de que este programa me ha sido mucho para mí y también para mí.
Entre los impactos que este proyecto ha tenido en la comunidad de Lato está que ellos y ellas tienen la oportunidad ahora de mirarse como personas que tienen la capacidad de construir su propia realidad, de mirar hacia adentro, reconociendo que tienen capacidades, dones, fuerzas, misiones que les permiten encontrar una vida digna y también tener relaciones saludables con sus esposos, esposas, con sus hijos, con sus vecinos. También entre las jovencitas ahora ellas pueden reconocerse como mujeres que son de una generación en la que tienen mayor capacidad de toma de decisiones, mayor capacidad de lograr lo que quizás sus abuelas y sus madres no fueron capaces de alcanzar, y de expandir su visión hacia algo diferente y hacia algo mejor en cuanto a su calidad de vida.
Aprendí que no tenemos que ser calladas y que tenemos que alzar la voz y ser muy valientes por cualquier cosa que venga.
One of the key goals of this program was to start a movement that then can be taken over by the community, and we are so proud and inspired to say that that truly has happened. Though we will continue to work with the community in many ways moving forward, this chapter of this whole family healing program is closing, but we're actually able to see the community members themselves take it on themselves. We have men that are interested in becoming healers themselves after going through the program. We have women that are interested in running their own workshops based on what they learned. So we really have seen what it can look like when we help plant a seed, but now the community's really letting everything grow. And that's our biggest hope as an organization, is to work in collaboration with the community and really understand what their needs are and support them in achieving their needs, and most importantly, letting them be the leaders of change. And that's something that I think brings all of us great joy and inspiration, is really seeing these participants now truly step up as the leaders, and we can't wait to see all the things that they're going to create and change in the future.
Okay, so two really valuable videos from the two projects. So we're going to flip over to the second issue, which we'll have a little bit less time for, but I think it would still be valuable to hear your thoughts, and that's about the fact that both projects built in support to address the mental health aspects of gender-based violence. And so you made available counseling or therapy to help people to heal from the trauma that they'd experienced. And so we know there's stigma associated with mental health, with naming, acknowledging that you have a mental health issue, seeking help. And I just wondered, how did you go about trying to break through that stigma so that people would actually be willing to name that issue and to seek help? So maybe this time we'll start with Danielle and then go to Maria.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, this was definitely a challenging piece. We'd been working in the community for quite some time, and so we went in there and we thought we had strong understanding of our programs and the value in having the therapy sessions, but we did see less buy-in initially than we thought we would at the start. There was just a lot of stigma, which was rooted in some people just not understanding what therapy we were providing and what that looked like, to people being against it, really a strong belief that problems should be solved in the homes, and that people should not be talking about their issues with anyone external or seeking that sort of support. Where we found success was really just integrating our therapists into just core activities. So not really pushing anyone into any therapy quickly. The therapists were present at all of our workshops, which were much more of a kind of lighthearted, safe space. They could connect with the therapist. The therapist could be there to just become more of a familiar face, and also start to share a bit more about what different discussion topics would look like in therapy. And it was just a much more like a small step, and was really focused on relationship building with our therapist was really key at the start. And even for about 2 full months, that was really key. And then also the therapist, because it was a family focused intervention, they were doing home visits with the families at the invitation to the families. And so also those initial sessions were very slow to kind of integrate any therapeutic practices. They'd even just bring games to play a game as a family and just foster some discussion there. So really taking things very slowly, we found was important, and really focusing on relationship building first, always being upfront as to what the therapy approaches were, but taking things slowly. But it was more challenging than we anticipated as well, for sure, to get that buy-in.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Over to you, Maria.
Yeah, I think we had a similar experience. In the communities where the project took place, something that we did recognize was that for most women, this was the very first time they had access to a lawyer or a psychologist. So I'm not entirely sure if there was so much stigma as Danielle also said, like not a non-existent knowledge and awareness of what psychology even is and what a psychologist can offer and what that looks like and why you would need it. So the capacity building had some components of just increasing awareness on emotions, but what also proved successful, similar to Danielle's example, was integrating the psychologist into the self-help groups. So the psychologist facilitated several of the first sessions, and similar to the experience in Sardinia, she had some activities, discussed emotions, so like very basic level of identifying how people were feeling, naming emotions, and then having some facilitated activities so women started to explore those aspects and sharing with each other. And then building that trust, having her there is what slowly started to lead to an interest in seeing and seeking the psychology services.
Mhm. So did that happen through the self-help groups? That kind of,
Yeah. So they received facilitated support from the psychologist.
Yeah.
Not always, but very often.
Yeah, that was a vehicle. Okay. Danielle, did you want to add anything else after hearing Maria's comments?
No, I think it's interesting how it was a similar kind of pathway to success through integration in those workshops. That's, why we were so enthusiastic when I, sat at a table with Sarah from Sombrilla at a recent conference, is that just seeing so many similarities in our programs. And even though we took different approaches, I think a lot of our learnings were the same, of things that we did that worked well, that, Sombrilla might do next time, and things that Sombrilla did that we did not do that we would like to integrate next time as well. So I think that the approach to therapy or counseling was in line with that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'll just open it up to see if anyone wants to ask any kind of question. We're going to take a short break after, but I just wondered before we break, and then we'll break into some groups for a little bit of discussion, if anyone has a question that they wanted to ask about the projects. Adrienne, please.
Hi, thank you for sharing about the two projects. That was really interesting. Just a question about what curriculum you used, or where did you get it, or did you develop it yourself, or what curriculum you used in your programs?
I can hop on that one first. So Sardinia, like even before FIT, we were a workshop focused program. So we launched our program in 2014 in collaboration with the Real Girl Foundation, who did have an existing curriculum for girls. It was developed in the United States. So basically ever since 2014, we've been working to customize it. So before we ever launched it in Guatemala, it went through very, very rigorous customization and vetting. We worked with local psychologists and educators from the get-go in 2014 to make sure that it was as culturally relevant. And then each year our team kind of finesses it, improves it, makes it more relevant. And that's what we use. For the FIT project, we did continue with our core curriculum that we have been running, but we had to include, as I said, more healing pieces, and we also started to include a lot more practices from traditional mind practices and the Mayan cosmovision. So we actually worked with two different groups to be able to do that. So our team did go through training. We did collaborative curriculum writing sessions with a group of Mayan healers in Guatemala, and also a group that focused more on restorative justice as well, to kind of create the FIT curriculum, which was a blend of our past curriculum and these new methodologies, which is now our core curriculum as well. And we're always eager to share and replicate our curriculum if anyone ever wants to enter into discussion about that.
And what were the main topics that you covered?
Yeah, so the kind of main topics of our core curriculum is First starting with identity and self-esteem and developing personal agency. So we call it, discovering my real self. Then we move into more goal setting, which is creating my own path. We do human rights with a focus on women's rights, children's rights, and Indigenous people's rights. We also have a menstrual health and puberty curriculum. We focus on sexual and reproductive health as well through a lens of bodily autonomy and consent. And then violence prevention and the creation of healthy relationships is a very Coles Notes version. It is a very robust curriculum. Our program does run for 40 weeks a year. So it's long. Mm-hmm.
Muted. Maria, do you want to take
Yeah.
up a question?
Yeah, so that's very interesting, Danielle. So in contrast, our capacity buildings were very short. They were 3 days, not 40 weeks. And the content was, some of the topics were similar. So there was women's rights module, and then there was a types of violence module. So the different types of violence, what they look like, examples. And then the last piece focused on the legal process. So the different legal options, what the services available to them in the public system, how they should work, the service that they should provide, and the different options available to women when they actually experience violence. The training was developed by OCDE, by the project team. They have worked in similar projects, but everyone is local. So the content was developed from scratch to be culturally relevant.
Thank you. Thanks, Adrienne. Anyone else who had a question that you wanted to ask about the projects at the moment? Okay. So we're going to take a short break. I'm thinking if it's okay with people, we'll just make it a 5-minute break, just chance for people to just make a quick exit and re-entry. And then when we come back, I'll explain the process. It's not too complicated process, but for this small group discussion, I'm just going to post the link to a Google Slides that we'll use for the conversation. So I have just before 6:40, so if we can come back at 6:45, then we'll pick up the conversation there. Thank you. Rick, your name is so familiar. I feel like our paths have crossed at some point over the years.
Well, what can I tell you? I was with the city of Edmonton for about 22 years.
Okay, so that's probably where it was. Yeah.
Director, and I was at the Catholic Social Services for
Okay.
the last
What are
30
those two
years.
places? What are those two places? So I know some people had another commitment to go to this evening, so we're a slightly shrunken shrunken group. So we're just going to make a little adjustment in terms of the process, but that's fine. We can make this work. So there's three questions that kind of emerge from what you just heard about the two projects, and so my thought is we'll just split into two groups and split the time between people tackling the first and the second question. And then when we come back together, I think we can have a group discussion about the third one, which is kind of application to the work here. So when you click on the Google Slides, we'll have group one tackle the first